Woo! Born out of the double-decker decade that is the 80s and 90s, baby. Wait. Who the hell says that? Yeah, no, I know. I'm like a walking 80s and 90s encyclopedia, but so what? No, I'm not going to write that. Yeah, no, I am the one that writes that. All right. Whatever. Anyway, the Golden Stallion here with you for your Wednesday Zomia ONE Underground Q&A. We're actually going to open up talking a little bit more about that. Got a ton of questions from people about Zomia ONE, the network that Sovereign Tech is spinning into. It's spinning out, but then it's also spinning into, because Sovereign Tech is, and I said this on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode, but I understand there was some confusion. Sovereign Tech is going to be, kind of the flagship show. Well, not kind of, it is the flagship show of Zomia ONE, because if there's going to be a whole lot of people shifting in and listening to all these shows, for starters, eventually I want it to be all kinds of people from all walks of life. Okay, and geographies, and that includes galactic ones. But for starters, it's going to be a lot of Sovereign Tech listeners. That fact should be fairly obvious. But anyway, got a lot of questions about that. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to spend the whole show talking about it. Like last week, I spent 30 minutes talking about it, but then I was announcing it for the first time and giving the Sovereign Tech patrons, originally on Patreon, and that now can join the Zomia ONE Underground, giving you the heads up, because I consider you executive producers. And actually, some of the people that I mentioned who were, only subscribing to me on PayPal, they already have moved, ever since they heard the Sovereign Tech Prime episode about it. They have moved over to, moving over to Zomia ONE. So, which thank you, by the way, because you will hear this. Even though episodes are still uploading, I'm like 95% of the way there with uploading episodes. So not long after this comes out, after this Q&A gets released, that'll be up. And then this week's Sovereign Tech Prime will come out. And then hopefully, as I've been trying to do with, of course, the life changes, which I described last week. Hopefully I'll be back to a more regular schedule, and we got a lot of great content to get out to you. We have, let's talk about this. A lot of people are asking about the shows that are going to be on Zomia ONE. And, of course, there's going to be Sovereign Trek, which was originally the Star Trek update. Now, some people actually emailed me and said, wait, isn't Sovereign Trek and Sovereign Tech a little too close for comfort? Not at all. Actually, yes, but that's not a problem, and it's actually by intention, because maybe what'll happen is that someone will accidentally say, when they're going through Zomia ONE or something, they'll click on Sovereign Trek, or Sovereign Trek will lead them to Sovereign Tech, vice versa, whatever. That's completely on purpose. As far as like the people that would even know to, listen to both, or that would listen to both, you're going to know the difference. So no, it's meant to kind of, maybe cross-pollinate a bit in that way. So that's totally by design. There will be Sovereign Trek. I will be having Robin Freebeard on that show a little more. I might have not a little more, but more talking about Discovery and everything, among other things, however that shapes up. There will be other guests on that show as well, other co-hosts that I plan on. There are other co-hosts already. I'm not going to reveal all of those just now. But there will be. Now, so also, of course, Robin Freebeard and I will do TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast. And I think I might have said this before, like why the name. I had people asking me, what's the name TIE Fighter Renegades? Well, it is TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast. But basically, there's so many Star Wars podcasts out there that I think just putting the name Star Wars in it isn't exactly beneficial. Right? It's not exactly going to, I don't know that that's going to help so much with search results. As to where people looking for TIE Fighter, the people, typing in TIE Fighter and maybe podcasts or something like that is actually going to grab a far more hardcore fan, which is very much what TIE Fighter Renegades is going for. So I think there's more advantage to that. So believe me, there's a lot of thought. This, like I said last week, this has been going on for months. A lot of thought has gone into this. Okay. as far as like naming everything and all of that. And as far as what shows there are going to be. The other one that I felt comfortable announcing is the Hard and Fast podcast. Now the Hard and Fast podcast is a heavy metal or a metal and hard rock podcast that will have album reviews, much like we do on the Wednesday Q&A, but they'll be more in depth. Also, there will be, in fact, this has been really exciting for me. I've gotten in touch with, well, frankly, either managers, agents, or directly to band members of, honestly, a lot of the albums that I've covered for Album of the Week on Wednesday Q&As. And they are excited that there is going to be a show that is going to treat them with the, well, I don't want to say necessarily the respect they deserve, but is actually going to treat them like they fucking exist, which is part of the reason I was doing Album of the Week in the first place. But, if I can transpose over, so, the thousands and thousands of Sovereign Tech fans, or at least a few thousand of them, and get them some mind share on with, whatever, like what Tesla's doing, or, you go down the list of it, Dream Theater, Queensryche, whatever, then dynamite, and then, I mean, because these people don't get any coverage, and I've talked to some of them already, and, I mean, the conversations, okay, it's really incredible, the conversations that are had around this. Basically, I mean, and this is an amazing thing to consider, okay, And before, I know the Hard and Fast podcast hasn't been released yet. I'm still like compiling a lot of different stuff for it and putting it together because I want that to be a very special show. Am I worried about someone else, saying, oh, wow, what I'm about to tell you, like that they're going to take it and run with it and beat me to the punch as far as being a metal podcast? Fuck no, because you're not me. I almost guarantee next to Eddie Trunk, you don't have my knowledge of metal. I mean, like, really, I know some of you know your shit out there. Okay. But like, I really know my shit. And also, like I have the built-in audience and, have been making the connections. And I'm not boasting here. I'm just saying I'm not worried. This is why I never worry about IP. I never worry about my ideas being out there because you can know all of my ideas. You can know everything that's like running through my fucking head, but you're not me. So, you need to be me to actually execute, and to make it really happen. So I'm not worried about it. So the Hard and Fast podcast, I was talking to an agent actually about this, and he was basically telling me, he says, Brian, you don't understand, podcasters and like radio guys, not the musicians themselves, but the podcasters and the radio guys, they're the rock stars now because, like nobody, you're not really getting any new buys and everything by, if you play a Queensryche song a new Queensryche song on the radio, okay, there's not going to be, that's not really going to do much for them. But when you have a podcaster with a passionate audience, most radio, I guess most radio stations or networks don't really have passionate audiences. It's the talk shows, it's the podcast, the radio shows and so on that have the passionate audiences. Now, basically saying that if I bring on, say, a guy from Queensryche or Fates Warning or something like that, that's going to do way more for them than their song getting played on some radio. And, so that's what he meant by that the podcasters are really the rock stars now. Now, not to pat myself on the back, I've been called that a few times. Okay. I mean, I do have the tagline of Rated R Radio Star, but I've had a few people over the years call me a rock star, which is very kind of them. But anyway, so yeah, I'm really excited about the Hard and Fast podcast because I love talking heavy metal. I really, really do. And to have a show like that is going to give these artists that are still out there really kicking ass, and really putting their heart and soul out there. I mean, even though there's no soul, like if I can give them, because they're totally enriching my life. Okay, with their music that they keep coming out with to this day. And you know that if you're a listener to the Wednesday Q&A, because I do an album of the week every week. And most of the times it's from a band that's been around for 30, 40 years, right? And it's a new album. Okay. So if I can get them some spotlight, fuck, it's the least I can do. Frankly, it is the absolute least I can do for everything that they've done for me. in my life. Also, granted, yeah, sure, a metal show is going to bring in a certain crowd, and maybe they're going to hear the rest of what's on Zomia One, and they're going to be like, holy shit, this is great, and maybe we'll make some anarchists out of them all. So, I mean, because I think if you're already into metal, you're already pretty rebellious in life, and so, you're just a hop, skip, and jump. Maybe even you don't even need to do the hop. You can maybe just skip and jump from becoming that. So, I think this is a wonderful thing. So very excited about the Hard and Fast podcast. Those are the three Game Talk is also going to spin out as its own show on Zomia One. So you're going to have that as well. And in fact, if you've already subscribed to Zomia One on Podbean, even if you're not a paid subscriber yet, if you've already subscribed to Zomia One, you have probably seen that shows like Sovereign Trek, or what was the Star Trek update, as well as TIE Fighter Renegades, or what was originally the Star Wars update, are already showing up for free. But their past ones, they're originally Patreon only. They're showing up for free in the Zomia One feed. And that's, I mean, A, it's great content, so I'm happy to have it out there. But B, it is to kind of pad, that way people aren't like, wow, that was really great, but can they do it again? Well, you can listen back for over a year at least, if not a couple of years worth of shows to, as far as content to grab. So anyway, it's working out great. I've gotten response from people where they're just like, holy shit, this is awesome. Really, really excited. In fact, here's an email I want to read, and it's a question that I'm going to have to address also on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode, but I just want to address it maybe a little more in depth here, and then I'll do a brief answer to it on Sovereign Tech Prime. So here we go. Dear Man of Tomorrow, and this is from Acid Density. All right. Dear Man of Tomorrow, I love your show and am stoked that you are fleshing it out into a full network. I mean, let's be honest, one show was never enough to contain all you can offer. Woo. Thank you. Let me touch on that for a second. Again, I'm not here to pat myself on the back. Okay. I'm really not, but let me touch on this. And this is kind of what I was saying earlier. You can have all of these ideas. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to make a network. And believe me, I've heard, real goofballs, particularly even in the Liberty movement, who have said, oh yeah, I'm going to start my own network. I'm going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And that's great. You can have all the great ideas in the world, but you have to, here's the thing, especially in media, and this is going to be a subject that comes up quite a bit on Sovereign Tech in general. It'll actually be coming up on a Game Talk, which really will have to do with, well, it would appear, and we'll know on the 19th of this month at GDC, but the Game Developers Conference, Google, it appears, is going to be releasing a console, perhaps, or maybe just an add-on to the Chromecast, but they're going to come out with some kind of gaming hardware. That seems very clear right now. Codename Yeti. And we're going to talk about why that might be a reality, or why that's not why it's a reality. It's going to be a reality, but why that's happening, why Google is doing that. We will very much break that down because they've made some very interesting, moves, including hiring, Jade Raymond, who she is a dynamite name in gaming and development. But anyway, and actually, this will play into something I think we're going to talk about later when we get into more questions. Got some great questions to get into here. And that is like you can make the greatest fucking thing ever. You can, be it software, whatever, or even like a podcast that is so technically sound and the information's phenomenal, blah, blah, blah. You could do the most incredible thing, objectively. And yes, there is objectivity in art, despite what other people think. There's some subjectivity, sure, but there is also objectivity, okay, based upon what metrics you might be talking about. You can do a podcast where there's sound effects every second, there's all this shit. You can do all this stuff, but look, if the people behind it don't have a certain charm or charisma or something, if they're not selling themselves at the end of the day, it's not going to go anywhere. Unless they put in millions of dollars in marketing, but then the person's not really making any money off of it, right? They're just spending a ton on marketing and making their numbers look good, but they might not actually be making any real money. I can think of a couple entrepreneurial podcasts where that's absolutely the reality. They can claim, oh yeah, they did $1 million last year, but as I've said many times, well, they also spent $999,000 to even make that $1 million. And what are they left with? What, $1,000? Or whatever. You get my point. Okay. So yeah, you've got to have the stuff. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have. It doesn't matter, what great ideas you have. None of that stuff matters. I mean, it matters and it's important and it's a good thing, but you've got to have the delivery. You got to have the it factor. And I'm not going to necessarily claim that I've got that. I'm just saying that you really have to have that. And I will say that, basically, I mean, on Patreon for the past year, basically, I have been, doing like an entire network because of all the different shows that have spun out and everything, Game Talk, User Podcast, Star Trek Update, Star Wars Update, and all that. It's great having Robin on with those as well. I'm not going to take all the credit for how good those shows are, but basically, I mean, for a while I did all of those alone. And that's because I can talk about all that stuff. I have that knowledge. I have experience with it. And I think I have a pretty okay delivery. So, I mean, for this person to say how we started on this, for this person to say, I mean, let's be honest, one show, it was never enough to contain all you can offer. Yeah, thank you. I like, honestly, I'm just going to say, I like getting the recognition, especially right now. I really like getting the recognition for that, that I deliver on the goods and that I've got a lot to say and right on. So thank you for that. Anyway, and in case you're wondering, you can look at this guy up. I think he just followed me on Twitter recently. Acid Density is like it's a real person. So anyway, go ahead. Or I'll keep going here. I've even gone ahead and signed up on Podbean in parallel to Patreon so I can start the merger without missing a beat. But I have a problem. I can't seem to find a way to access the premium content via my favorite podcast app, which he says is Podkicker. Are you aware of any way to accomplish this, or is my best option to just use the Podbean app? Thank you for putting out such great content. Someday I hope we are able to share a coffee and some conversation. Respectfully yours, Acid Density. So this person's already a patron, so they're going to hear this too. And great. Thank you for signing up for both already. I know a lot of people are waiting pretty much till the end of the month to sign up for Podbean and, rock and roll, whatever it takes. So here's the rub. And this is what it took me so long to get away from Patreon. Not that I was lazy. Sure as fuck, that's not the reason. Okay. It took me a while to get away from Patreon because Patreon, because Patreon has so much to offer. Like they have those, their RSS feed system is second to none. The way that it's a custom RSS feed for everybody that signs up and that it can cut off automatically and all shit. I mean, that's incredible. So, and I know other people could pull it off. Podbean doesn't do that. They don't offer that. So the long story short here is that you won't be able to get it on Podkicker. You're only going to get it on the Podbean app. And like, there's no way to, so the other way to do this is that you can, if you're logged into the website, if you're logged in at Zomia One, which is a Podbean website, and that's on purpose so that it could do exactly what I'm about to tell you. If you're logged in at ZomiaOne.com, which, by the way, that site is back up. There were some issues, and anyway, a patron let me know about it, and thank you. And I'll keep referring to everybody as patrons, by the way, because on Podbean they call you patrons. So there you go. Zomia One was down, but I got that fixed. But on ZomiaOne.com, when you go there, if you're logged in, you can listen to all of the underground content, is what I should call it. All the underground content right on the site. The player is not as nice as the Patreon player was, which allowed for different speeds and all this other stuff. Or at least I don't think the player allows for that. I could be wrong. But again, that's where Patreon was like, way above board and really, or not just going above and beyond. I shouldn't say above board, going above and beyond in feature set that they allowed for. Which just leads to why, I really didn't want to leave it because it just offered so fucking much. But the problem is that, and other people have emailed me and messaged me and said, oh yeah, you're right about the Patreon app. It's a fucking, it's a shit show. It's a wreck. And some people were saying that it was the same on iOS and Android. I didn't know if it was just an Android problem, but no, apparently it's true on iOS as well. So bottom line being, like, so you could listen to it through the website if you didn't want to use the Podbean app. Okay, that's one possibility for you to go with. And you couldn't actually just like put in the website as an RSS feed on a podcast app because it's going to require the password to get access to it. I know some podcast apps allows for you to enter in passwords. I don't think that would work though. So basically you're going to have to use the Podbean app. Now there's advantages though to using the Podbean app. Like I said, you can comment on episodes. There's, social features to it and everything. I mean, there's a lot of advantages to using the Podbean app. I mean, if you just want to consider it and you only use it for Zomia One and you just want to consider it the Zomia One app, well then, just rock and roll with that. And do things that way because it's a solid podcast app. I mean, it really, really is. So anyway, yeah, unfortunately there's no way to do like a custom RSS that I can give to people like Patreon did. I wish that existed. That's why I was so resistant to going to anywhere other than Patreon, but it just got to a point people were raising enough of a stink. And also I was running into issues with Patreon that, it's like, okay, no, it's time to leave. And when I left I said to myself, okay, now that I'm leaving, we're going to really lay these plans out. We're going to go all the way. We're going to finally release that network. The other thing too, Patreon just did a huge update, redesign of their website. And it sucks. I can't even see, I still haven't figured out where the hell do I see notifications from my patrons? Okay. Like there's an easy way to see messages. And by the way, I did message some patrons who were very gracious with their resources. And I just want to say thank you to those that I reached out to. You helped out this, this month with getting the network transitioned over. So thank you for your time on that and everything else. But anyway, so I could find messages, but like where there's notifications, I have to use the mobile app and the mobile app fucking sucks. So Patreon's going downhill fast and I think they're really desperate. The amount of emails that are trying to tell creators how they can build up their audiences and so on, are getting very frequent as to where before it was like maybe once a month you'd get something from Patreon. And that's a big maybe. That has changed dramatically now. Now, you're getting like an email, it seems like almost every few days if you're a creator from Patreon. Here's how you can do this because I think they know they fucked themselves. And I'm not necessarily knocking Patreon, okay? Because some of the people that they had gotten rid of, I wasn't unsupportive, okay? And most of the people that they've gotten rid of, I really don't care, but at the same time, I get it, right? And, anyway, Podbean's not doing that. So we switched over to Podbean. But yeah, the best thing to do is just use the Podbean app. Even if you only use it for Zomia One, just consider it a really nice implementation of Zomia One or something. I mean, that's, is it like consider it the Zomia One app if you want. Or you can go through the website. The website works very well as well. Far better than Patreon's website does. So anyway, all right. Now I've already talked 22 minutes about that and that's way longer than I wanted to talk about this, but it is a question that came in from a patron. I will briefly mention it on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode that no, if you want to become a patron for Zomia One and join the Zomia One Underground, if you want to hear that content, you either have to listen to it on the website logged in, or you have to use the Podbean app. I mean, I wish Patreon didn't pull the stunts that they pulled. I wish it wasn't such a shitty app. All kinds of things I wish for. But this is the best way to make this happen. And Podbean, I mean, again, remember, it's not just about Patreon. This also gets me away from the looming threat that is SoundCloud. This frees up a whole lot of options. This really does a lot for me, and it really makes this idea of the network a very efficient and honestly cost-effective setup to do it. So this is the way to go. But anyway, thank you so much for that question and the kind words as well. Thank you for for recognizing that I have a lot to say that is far beyond even what's far beyond Sovereign Tech's purview, which is a lot of what I've been doing on Patreon for the past year anyway. Okay, so let's move on from that. But there was, I think that was the biggest one, is that, well, is there a way that I could just use my regular podcast app? Unfortunately not. You do have to use the Podbean app. And we'll move on from there. And of course, as stuff rolls out on Zomia One, you'll see it. I already see quite a few of you have gone and followed on Podbean, have followed Zomia One, and I'm honored by that. And this is going to be a great time. So, anyway, okay, let's get to another question here. Let's try and get to 2 or 3 of them here. Hey, man of tomorrow, do you have a take on USB 3.2 and USB 4? Just curious if this is going to be worth getting a new laptop over. Thank you for your tireless work. Woo! Thank you. Okay. No, this is not worth getting a new laptop over. So the speeds are significantly higher than, say, USB 3, okay, and the connector, as far as I know, is going to be USB-C, it's going to be that C-type connector, right, even though the specification is USB 4. Let's just break this right down, because there's not a whole lot of point to talking a lot about it. USB 4 is basically Intel's Thunderbolt 3. That's all USB 4 is. And Intel has, for whatever reason, because they really they really cornered the market in a very real way on USB, or on Thunderbolt, okay, and all of the abilities that allowed for. And Thunderbolt really was Thunderbolt 3 does allow for a lot of amazing shit. I mean, it's basically, a PCI Express port that can do everything, it feels like a PCI Express port. You can plug in, and this is where maybe, if say you're into buying AMD, which I don't blame you, when you hear about, especially there's the new, what is it called? Spoiler, which is the theoretical attack that takes advantage of Rowhammer, against your RAM, but then also takes advantage of speculation attacks, like was laid out with Spectre and Meltdown. But that only affects Intel processors. The spoiler does not affect AMD or ARM processors. So maybe you're an AMD guy. The thing is, if you were an AMD guy, which I'm kind of an AMD guy, if you're an AMD guy, you can't get Thunderbolt 3, right? Because that's an Intel technology and it only works with their processors. Well, USB 4 is opening that up to work with a lot of things. And where this could be advantageous for getting a new laptop is USB 4, I would assume, just like Thunderbolt 3, will allow you to connect an external graphics card, or really a chassis that can house and power an external graphics card, which can be really nice because you can get great computers, very slim computers that have really great, like Coffee Lake processors, or in the case of AMD, have some great Ryzen processor in it, whatever. But then it'll have just an integrated GPU. It won't have a dedicated GPU in it or something like that. And what a shame, because, and it could have even 16, 32 gig of RAM in it and everything, but it just has a shitty GPU. It's using Intel UHD, whatever their latest is. And that's a pity, right? Because you have a great computer there that could probably do some pretty solid gaming, might have a gorgeous screen on it. And if only you could have Thunderbolt 3 on there, a Thunderbolt 3 port, which looks like a USB-C port, and plug in one of those external graphics cards, setups, then, you'd have a gaming machine there as well when you go home. And you could just carry around this really, this portable Ultrabook wherever else you go. So, for USB 4 to be a thing and worthwhile to buy, I would say if you're planning on doing that, if you want to do that sort of thing, then I think Thunderbolt 3, or in this case, USB 4, becomes interesting. Otherwise, honestly, save me and maybe one other person I can think of on the entire planet. I don't know a whole lot of people that deal with data outside of the enterprise, outside of the business industry in general. I don't know anybody that deals with the multiple gigabytes or terabytes even of data like I do. I don't talk to anybody that does that. I've never really talked to somebody who even has movie files anymore. Everybody just fucking is part of the cult of Netflix. Everybody just does Netflix now. And I don't know. I don't grasp it. I don't understand. Well, I should say I don't necessarily understand the cult of Netflix. I mean, with Voltron over, I don't really need Netflix anymore. And I did buy it originally just to piss people off because of the Dear White People show. But like those people have been pissed off and they forgot about that after a week anyway. So, because it's just rage porn for them. So, I don't really need a Netflix account anymore. Not that I ever really needed it anyway. Again, like I said, I was really just getting it to piss people off and to kind of support Voltron. But basically, I don't know who the fuck needs, I just haven't met people that need USB 4. I can think of a couple people off the top of my head, but of all the people that I know that are very tech savvy, practically no one, that really would need the speeds that USB 4 is delivering. But I do know plenty of people that would really love and take advantage of having an external GPU, attached to their laptop so that they could play the latest, hottest games. So if you want to do that, if that's like a setup you're going for, yeah, then USB 4 is, and you're an AMD person, then USB 4 is worthwhile going after. USB 4 will be helpful for the Linux community. I can admit, I could see where that might end up becoming a thing. But anyway, otherwise, if you're only like transferring, I don't know, a couple gig every week or month or something like that, honestly, USB 2 was probably doing very well for you. And look, even though USB 4 is going to be like this new hot spec, like we talked about recently, I think we were talking about in the Sovereign Tech Prime episode, or yeah, it was when we were talking about 5G. Most people don't realize, oh, sure, your phone has USB-C, but it's not using USB 3 speeds even. It's only using USB 2. So when USB 4 would even be taken advantage of in a laptop or tablet, or not a laptop, in a smartphone or tablet, I have no idea. It could take years before that even becomes a thing for those, or where companies will manufacture it and put that in. So, yeah, if you're asking, would you buy a new laptop? Nah. Not unless you want to do the whole gaming thing, but then it might just be more cost effective for you to buy a laptop that has a really kick-ass GPU in it. So what the hell? All right, let's get on to another question here. Try and get through as many of these as we can. This was interesting. Okay. So this is a site that was sent to me by a patron, and it's tools.privacymachine.info. And there have been quite a few of these sites really ever since the Snowden revelations. What was that, 2013? There have been a lot of these kinds of sites where it is a curator of various privacy tools and software and services that are out there. This one is definitely more on the hardcore side. Like there's other ones where they give you nice recommendations and everything. And I've had them in the show notes for Sovereign Tech for years, and I don't know what the click-through rates. Well, actually I do know some of the click-through rates and they've never been very good. But anyway, I did put a link in the show notes for this episode for this one. And it's interesting. This has a very, very extreme attitude towards privacy, where it has more of the Sovereign Tech take, where it doesn't just look at, okay, is this open source? It also looks at the attitude of the company and even looks at like CEOs and everything and like what have they done in the past, which is not following the money, but as I always say, don't follow the money, follow the attitude. And one of the more interesting things, and the person that actually shared this, who, got to give him a big thanks. He's been a big help recently for me. The person who shared this, he thought it was interesting that under search engines, because there's a bunch of different categories here that they have listed off that you can check out, web browsers, operating systems, whatever. Under search engines, there were a bunch of search engines that I had never heard of, he'd never heard of. And ironically, one of the ones not listed, or interestingly, one of the ones not listed was DuckDuckGo. Now, the reason, apparently, for this site, tools.privacymachine.info, not recommending DuckDuckGo, which admittedly I recommend all the time, is A, they are a U.S. company, so they are subject to the Patriot Act, to the NSA, to, the laws that Casper Bowden, the late great Casper Bowden, brought to light and everything, which we've talked about many times. Basically, if you are a U.S. company, whatever is on your servers is absolutely the property and can be looked at any moment by request or by not request of the U.S. government. Okay, we've talked about that many times. That's why I was recommending, get your sites on servers overseas, get your email from potentially companies that are overseas that don't have US servers, even though all of that has become harder. And now there's like the Cloud Act, which basically makes that meaningless anyway. And I would actually argue that if he's going to say there's some kind of advantage to companies being overseas, like in Europe, as far as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the Cloud Act, which President Trump put into play, basically says that, no, the NSA can also search servers fucking anywhere, in the world. I mean, maybe maybe one of the you might be safe if it was like Russia or China, perhaps, or North Korea. Apparently they have servers. It might be safe like there, but then, of course, they have similar laws to the Patriot Act and so on, obviously, and China's China, where, your data isn't sure as hell isn't safe there. So, the argument that somehow a company being elsewhere anymore, ever since the Cloud Act, I don't think holds water. No pun intended, as far as clouds go. But whatever. And then he goes on to talk about that the CEO and controlling shareholder of DuckDuckGo, that being Gabriel Weinberg, has been involved with companies that were very anti-privacy by their nature in years past. So it's an interesting argument to bring up. I don't know that I'm going to tell people don't use DuckDuckGo. I mean, the best argument to not use DuckDuckGo is that it uses Bing as its backend. That's a huge problem, right? But DuckDuckGo really does a lot for privacy and the open source community that I don't mind recommending them at all. Are they the best thing out there? No. Is it search done 100% right? No, I would never claim that. And actually, when we did the story about the Sinister Six, right, Life Without the Tech Giants, even Kashmir Hill, she couldn't use DuckDuckGo because they were based on Amazon's, they were using Amazon servers to host their stuff. And she ran into problems there. Now, we talked about how just because something uses Amazon servers doesn't necessarily mean that Amazon owns that service's ass, right? So that's going a bit extreme, but he also brings up that a lot of what they're using on their back end is, with AWS, through Amazon. Anyway, even though supposedly DuckDuckGo claims that they are in control of their own servers, blah, blah. Anyway, that was interesting that he made a case against DuckDuckGo. And he did recommend, which is usually the one, generally when people ask me like about search engines, they'll ask me the question, should I use Startpage or should I use DuckDuckGo? And I know a lot of people like Startpage, and that's fine. Startpage basically anonymizes Google. This person at Privacy Machine recommends Startpage. That is one of the top recommendations here. And hey, fine. I've never told people don't use it. If you recommend, if you feel good with that, then use Startpage. That's fine. There's one called SeerX or Searx. I'm going to guess it's SeerX. There's Quant, Metager, or maybe it's Metager, but it's not UR at the end. Peakier. There's a few here. Unbubble, Swiss Cows. I thought that was interesting. But anyway, the one that really caught my eye though, and I want to deep dive in more, and I've been looking into it, and it's very interesting, is one called either Yasi or Yassi. I couldn't find the exact pronunciation, the way that it's said. So I'm going to run with Yassi, or maybe it's Yasi. Anyway, this is actually software you have to install, and of course they have it for pretty much every platform, or they have it for Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. They don't have it on mobile. Of course, having things on mobile comes with its own challenges. But anyway, this Yasi, yeah, I'm going to go with Yasi. How about that? This Yasi is software you have to install. It's completely decentralized. Okay, like totally decentralized and distributed. And I mean, check out the website. I'll put the link in the show notes for it. And it's really, really interesting how they have this all set up. Here, in fact, I'll read the the beginning, the opening comments on their website here. Web search by the people for the people. Yacey is a free search engine that anyone can use to build a search portal for their intranet or to help search the public internet. When contributing to the worldwide peer network, the scale of Yacey is limited only by the number of users in the world and can index billions of web pages. It is fully decentralized. All users of the search engine network are equal, and the network does not store user search requests, and it is not possible for anyone to censor the content of the shared index. We want to achieve freedom of information through a free distributed web search, which is powered by the world's users. So basically, here, let me read this next paragraph. Decentralization, that's what it's titled. Imagine if, rather than relying on the proprietary software of a large professional search engine operator, your search engine was run by many private computers which aren't under the control of any one company or individual. Well, that's what Yacey does. The resulting decentralized web search currently has about 1.4 billion documents in its index and growing. Download and install Yacey to help out, and more than 600 peer operators contribute each month. About 130,000 search queries are performed with this network each day. And I did install it actually on a Windows machine. There's an exe, very simple installation. And, it opens up and you get something in the browser and everything, and it works like a search engine. The thing is, it's only as good as many people use it. That is the very nature of distributed and decentralized systems. It's only as good as the network effect. But the beautiful thing is that everything happening on Yacey stays on your computer. It never goes off to some server somewhere because there's no server. It's distributed and decentralized. And I think this is pretty brilliant. And I really support the fuck out of this as far as being an alternative search engine. Now, is it anywhere near as good as Google or even DuckDuckGo and so on? No, because let's understand about, first off, DuckDuckGo is using Bing, okay, as its back end. DuckDuckGo doesn't really have its own search engine. And, Google, of course, is making a copy basically of the entire internet, multiple times over every day. And that's how that functions. And there is a very real problem where that's going to run into a scaling issue. All right. And I've talked about that in the past on Sovereign Tech, that eventually the piper's going to have to get paid on that. Like that can't keep going on as is, which is another reason why I think machine learning and, implementing basic AI into a lot of this stuff is becoming more and more of a thing. That way you don't have to actually store everything that's going on the internet. You just have much better web crawlers, okay, that are powered by this machine learning and AI. So anyway, all of that said, I think Yacey looks fantastic. This is a very, very cool project. I'm going to keep it installed. I will install it on every one of my computers, frankly. And, I hope that this sort of thing takes off. And I'll probably do a deeper dive on it on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode just to get more people on board with this sort of thing. However, I'll admit I am not super hopeful that people will get on board with it. Because you don't know what it took to try and get at least like 10 people on RetroShare. And I've discussed recently, like there was a couple Q&As ago where I discussed the issues with because you really need a change of mindset for this sort of stuff to work. There needs to be a change of mindset to even use Yacey. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So I think there's tutorials out there. I thought I heard it pronounced a couple different ways, even on the tutorials. But anyway, trying to get people on RetroShare. Look, like the distributed, decentralized internet that everybody's so fucking hot and bothered about and everybody apparently wants, blah, 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 blockchain. Woo! Give me all that decentralization. Let's do it. You want decentralization over there? You do? Are you using RetroShare? Exactly. Right, you don't. So, yeah, fuck it. See my point? So, if nobody's going to use it, it doesn't matter who says they want it or whatever. You got to start using it now. Now, RetroShare even actually, I wanted to bring this up on Sovereign Tech Prime, maybe try and implore people to start using this again. Because in February, so Yacey, if you're wondering, is this regularly updated? Yeah, it was updated just last month. Okay. Like a couple weeks ago. RetroShare just had a huge update. They're up to version 0.6.5. And that was just updated middle of February. Okay. And that, was a very cool update for a few different reasons. One is that it's trying to make the chat aspects of the software. Like it's trying to bring that all together and make the chat part of it a lot easier, because I imagine the RetroShare team sees that, kind of this distributed, decentralized chat network, has real legs, and I wouldn't disagree with them. In fact, actually, you can get, on F-Droid, on Android, there is a RetroShare app. There's a couple flaws here. It's an alpha. It only takes advantage of RetroShare's chat capabilities, and you can't import your private keys into it to where you could use your account. You'd be using a separate account with it, but it does. I've tested it out. It does work. But anyway, RetroShare. So they're fixing the chat aspects, which I think is a win. They've also made it so that Tor, it can port through Tor automatically. And actually, even on Windows specifically, you can get the portable version, which I've always recommended. That way you don't have to reinstall it on every computer. You can just kind of take it around with you. The portable version of it has the Tor executable built into it. So you can use RetroShare completely through Tor now. It's a brilliant move. So, I mean, not only is this, decentralized, distributed, etc., okay, giving us the dream that everybody fucking wants, or that they say they want for an internet, at least all the people involved in blockchain. But it also now takes advantage of Tor, and another anonymity layer built into it, even though it already has PGP encryption and everything else built in. So, RetroShare just got a lot hotter in the past month. Okay. Try to get people to use this thing. Good luck. And is it complex? Sure, it's a little complex. But then, it's the 10th law of thermodynamics, as I call it. There's always a trade-off between, convenience and security. Okay. You cannot have both in equal measure. There's always some kind of, the scales always tip. There's some complexity. They're trying to fix that with chat aspects of it. I think that's a brilliant move, but it's still always going to be a little complex to set it up and to do it right. And I hope their Android app takes off. I mean, I think that's great that they've decided to create one, even though I think that's going to run into the same battery issues that I described with, that RetroShare, presents a problem with, even on a laptop, right? Where it really drains the battery because it's just constantly, packets are just going back and forth the whole time. I mean, and this is the nature of a lot of these different things, like another great piece of kit is Riot, right? Riot.im. They have a great mobile app, a fucking awesome mobile app. Okay. And an awesome desktop. And it has a lot of the encryption features are there. It can fucking do everything. Video calling, audio calling, groups. It does all the shit, but it'll drain your battery, especially on your smartphone. It'll drain it like there's no tomorrow, And so like we were talking about a couple of weeks ago on the Q&A, well, I mean, then we got to get that fucking Energizer phone that has that 10,000 milliampere battery. Just so it can go get through a day, but run these decentralized, apps. Anyway, so bottom line being is, all of this was, in fact, I think RetroShare is on the site, privacymachine.info. That's really RetroShare is, the future is here. And that is it. And it's mind-boggling to me that more people won't jump on it. And they really, really should. But it's interesting to look through that. There's some other stuff recommended. There's Tails OS and so on, all of which you might find. Well, I recommend using Tails OS all the time. But a lot of interesting suggestions to look through. So I appreciate that site being brought to bear. It's one of the better ones that I've seen, and it has a more extreme attitude that I really appreciate. And that in the past I have espoused on Sovereign Tech, even though I've softened up a little bit on that, just because, just like I was just talking about, I can't get people to use RetroShare. You can't convince them to do that. I mean, he's saying don't use DuckDuckGo. I can't get people to use DuckDuckGo. Very few people have I gotten in touch with who I know listen to the show that actually use DuckDuckGo on the regular, or even will use Firefox. And oh man, Firefox, that's a whole other fucking thing. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Mozilla is now they've made another rendering engine. They're going to come. What is it? Phoenix that they have, which is going to be their new mobile web browser. They are so confused, but I mean, I get it. They only have, especially on mobile, they only have 1% of market share, of web browsing market share on mobile, but oh, God damn it. Anyway, you see the problems here. So, and I'm not depressed about it. and if it's only a small percentage of the population that actually uses these technologies and this great software that's out there that respects your privacy, does data handling right and encryption and all that, then that's all that it's going to be. And I am okay with that. But the thing is that I'm hearing so many people saying they want these technologies, but then they're not willing to do what it takes to use them. And that's where I get frustrated. That's where I get angry about this shit. So anyway, let's shake it up from that. Great website. I appreciate you bringing it to my attention, and all that you do for me and Sovereign Tech. Okay. Yeah. I kind of want to talk about this because Captain Marvel's like a hot thing right now. Yeah, I think I can talk about this briefly because I got a great album of the week that I want to get into here. And basically, Robin Freebeard put this on the community tab, which obviously is going to eventually become defunct when Patreon becomes defunct for Sovereign Tech. He shared it, and it was a YouTube video that was basically an ad. Well, here, I'll read what he said. Not that I needed more reasons to dislike Marvel movies. Woo, I tell you, my brother. He always... We're on the same page so often. But they're making military recruitment ads now. Barf. Yeah. And so you can watch this video, and it's basically Brie Larson, thanking the U.S. military. She's hopping in a plane to do it for real and all this stuff. I mean, yeah, it's a military recruitment ad. That's really what it is. And also, I think it's a way to make Brie Larson seem like a badass. Look, she's a great actress. I'm not taking that away from her. But anyway, the shit around Captain Marvel's getting nuts. It doesn't matter whether that movie's good or not. This is becoming a cultural force that is, or it's trying to be a cultural force that is not promoting the best of the human condition. That's nothing to do with feminism or anything like that. I'm not knocking that at all. And people that listen to Sovereign Tech know better of me. There are real problems. And I talked about, I think it was like the opening of the last Game Talk, where I went on some screed about Captain Marvel, and that was well before even other bullshit went down with this movie. But regardless, this is, and there have been other films where this is happening. I mean, yeah, basically Marvel is engaging in military recruitment ads. Is this anything new for Marvel? Nah, not really. For the movies, that might be something a little bit new, but I mean, this has been done even back when Marvel was just a comic books company. I remember in fourth grade, which I'm 37 now, so think how far back that was, where there was a comic book passed out in class that was by Marvel. It was with Captain America, and I remember right on the front of it, there was the words, like it's spelled out in rock, that it said drugs. There was just the word drugs, and Captain America's shield was breaking through the word, like he was taking on drugs, and it was talking about marijuana and all this other horse shit and everything. And so Marvel being a propaganda machine, I mean, Captain America is kind of, you could say it's changed over the years, like with Civil War and everything, but really Captain America's been a propaganda machine for the U.S. military for a long time, but this direct recruitment or like playing stuff out as recruitment ads. This is pretty fucking insidious. And in fact, I want to kind of lay out for you, and I hate to admit this, but I've admitted it before. And that is, like, what convinced me to get into the military. G.I. Joe probably had something to do with that, with me thinking that it was like acceptable and okay, because I love G.I. Joe. In fact, I still love G.I. Joe. I still read the comic books. I still watch the cartoon, blah, blah, blah. Admittedly, now I'm actually a Cobra guy, so I'm not really supporting the military aspects of that. I don't know when exactly that shifted more for me. Maybe it was after my disgust for the U.S. military, after being in the U.S. military. But I can admit that fiction had a hand in me joining the military. But more so than anything else, and I know this is going to sound weird, but Star Trek had a hand in me joining the U.S. military, because I wanted to be in Starfleet so bad growing up. I wanted rank. And the only way, I wanted to be an ensign or a lieutenant or something like that. And the only way that I could see myself getting rank and maybe doing some kind of exploration or going around the world and all that with like an organization was through the U.S. military. And when I thought I had a good reason to join the U.S. military, which had to do with 9/11, which is not a good reason, and there is no good reason to join the U.S. military, just to make that abundantly clear, I went for it. But I can admit that like wanting to be cool, like some shit I saw on TV or in comic books or in theaters or whatever, had a hand in getting me joining a murderous organization, which every military is. It had a hand in making me think that that's okay. Now, do I hate Star Trek for that? No. One thing to understand with a lot of this stuff, with a lot of franchises, a lot of fiction, and we need to be really clear about this, because I've gotten a lot of questions, especially with Star Trek. Everybody, you got to understand, I walk into gas stations and people call me Star Trek, or they call me Starfleet. Okay. Because I wear a Section 31 badge on any jacket I happen to be wearing at the time, because it's magnetic and I just switch it between jackets and all this. People know that when they think Brian Sovereign, they think Sovereign Tech and probably Star Trek. Like, those are the things that come up for them. Okay. And Satan comes up for them too, but I can't really control that one. That's my dad. Sorry, Dad. Anyway, conversation about my dad. That's something I have to have soon. Okay. People know me for Star Trek. And so, especially within like the anarchist and libertarian community and so on, I get a lot of people asking me, okay, about, hey, don't you feel like the Federation is espousing communism or socialism, and they're against money? Like, how does this gel with anarchism? Or I guess for them, it would be anarcho-capitalism. Or how does this gel with libertarianism? When you say you're a libertarian, I haven't called myself a libertarian for years. Even when I was on Free Talk Live, I wouldn't call myself a libertarian. In fact, most of the hosts on Free Talk Live years ago, at least, I don't know necessarily about now, but years ago wouldn't really, they'd say, okay, if you want to call me that, fine, but I don't self-identify that way. So that's nothing new for me. And anyway, you get people asking about that. And my answer to them was always the same. There is not just one writer for Star Trek. There's a shit ton of writers for Star Trek. Yeah, there was a time where Gene Roddenberry maybe had some vision, some singular vision perhaps, of what he wanted to espouse in the 23rd or 24th century in Star Trek while he was alive. But he even went through lots of different changes in what he wanted Star Trek to be and so on. And then, when he died in the 90s, other people took over, and those people had different fucking ideas. They really did. Take, for example, a guy who, I used to pretty much consider a friend, Brandon Braga. He's a libertarian. Capital L, he still believes in government, but he is like about as libertarian as anyone in Hollywood could be. And he espoused very different things. And that's why you end up with episodes of The Next Generation, like The Drumhead, where Picard is saying, when the first speech is censured and, the first link in the chain is forged, we're all damaged when somebody's, freedom is taken away or something like that. That's where a lot of those speeches would come from, because you have a libertarian writer come in like Brandon Braga. So I say all this that, you can't, it's not as easy as Star Trek is fucking statist, Marvel is statist, etc. Don't consume it. Don't watch it. You have different eras where this stuff had different ideas. You have to understand that there's different creative teams, different people in charge. Disney wasn't always in charge of Marvel and so on. And so things change. There's a lot of Marvel that I really love. Like Robin said, the Marvel movies are not one of them. They're not one of the things that I love. It is not surprising that they are, churning out recruitment ads using their movies and their characters. Carol Danvers, the character, it's so funny. Sure, she's a perfect one for this because she's trying to get you into the U.S. Air Force, right? Because that's what her character is about. It's so ironic because, Hal Jordan, a far more popular character, leaps and bounds more popular character than Captain Marvel ever was. Okay. Or ever will be, frankly, except for maybe because of this movie. But then, if we're talking raw dog comic books, never be at that level. He was a test pilot as well. He had a very similar, Captain Marvel in many ways is a copy of the Green Lantern, okay, of Hal Jordan. It's a female version of it. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's a fine idea. Okay. But continuing on. I never felt, and I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, especially of Hal Jordan. I like Kyle Rayner too, but especially of Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner and all that. And I never felt like they were in any way supportive of any U.S. military. I'm sure there's a comic book out there that I missed where they did that, but I never ever felt that way. So it's not like even if somebody is with the military in some form or fashion, which in a way Hal Jordan was, and you could argue that the Green Lantern are space police. I mean, they'd pretty much call themselves that, sure, but you never got that. Okay, where it felt like a recruitment ad. This is very intentional, and it's deplorable, and it's disgusting. It's as egregious as when Katy Perry, is turning her music videos into a recruitment ad. What was the song? Part of Me, which is a shame because a lot of Katy Perry's music is pretty good, and that can be a personally empowering message of a song with that message. But then what does she do? She turns it into a fucking recruitment ad for the U.S. Army. Fuck you. So yeah, this is pretty disgusting. But I bring up that I can admit where Star Trek, obviously G.I. Joe makes all the sense in the world and so on, where that made it kind of whittled me down a bit to thinking that the military is acceptable and okay and might even be a good thing to join. I am concerned that with the popularity of especially the Marvel movies right now, that, a lot of kids could grow up similar to how I did. I was not spared this fate. That they could think, well, if I want to be a superhero, I need to go join the military. That's where I can do superhero shit and go save the world. And that concept of saving the world and of being a hero and all this other stuff, that's the thing to really watch out for. Because if it's not the Marvel movies, it'll be something else. Okay. I mean, honestly, if it's still Star Trek Discovery is in no way doing a good job of being a recruitment tool right now. Though interestingly, the rank I did, if you're wondering, I wanted rank, how important that was to me. I actually found out, no, I didn't want rank, and I sure as hell didn't want it the way you have to get it through the U.S. military. And I ended up becoming a specialist. I actually stayed out of the ranking system. I learned to stay out of the ranking system within the military, and I became a specialist, which now is a rank that gets bantied about on Star Trek Discovery. And I think that's pretty much the first time I've ever really heard it in Star Trek. But anyway, that's besides the point. But Star Trek now, like Star Trek Discovery, is in no way any kind of recruitment tool. And I don't think Section 31 is a recruitment tool into the CIA either. I really don't see where that would, kind of come together. But yeah, basically, I guess I'm recommending, and I understand Ayn Rand's concept of the heroic life and all that stuff, and doing things that are heroic are fine things. But the idea of espousing to, or striving for heroism in the conventional sense, as in you go and stop the bad guy, that kind of heroism, if you want to be a hero because you are rescuing books, because you are becoming, a librarian of various culture and art, or should I say more specifically art, or you want to, maybe help, people realize that, well, you don't need the military anymore and all this stuff. I mean, there are ways to be a genuine hero in this life, but the idea of you are a hero and you are defeating the bad guy, that kind of heroism needs to go the way of the dodo. Okay. And you want to, if you want to make sure your kids don't join the military because they thought Captain Marvel was so fucking cool, that's the kind of heroism you've got to watch out for. I'm not saying there aren't times where there are bad guys. There most certainly are. And there aren't times where you don't step in and you put a stop to, a very heinous act being committed. Okay. And do so peacefully. I'm not saying that there aren't times for that, but for children, if you are concerned, and as you should be, if you are concerned that they're going to fall for the recruitment ads of the Marvel films, the idea, just try and have conversations about them that, this idea of being the hero and killing the bad guy is, that's not all right. That's not for humans to do. There's a big conversation to have around that. All right. And it's bigger than I can have right now. But basically, this is disgusting. And, does it mean like completely boycott Marvel? No, I'm not going to say that because, like I said, I understand where Robin's coming from and I agree with him, because it's just disgusting and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, to say not much, even more. But understand that these things always fall under different creative teams, different people in charge. Maybe the U.S. In Hollywood, the military gives you a really good deal. If you make your movie very favorable towards the military, they will let you use equipment for free. They'll let you use footage for free. They'll give you all kinds of access to take advantage of military equipment, bases, personnel, etc. They really will. And that's why it's so attractive for a lot of movies, action movies especially, even science fiction movies, to be very kind to the military. And that's really insidious, frankly. But that's a reality. Like that's a very real deal. And we've talked about that years ago on Sovereign Tech, that the military can really make or break a movie. The military basically made it so that Top Gun 2 could not come out, 20 years ago. Now we are getting a Top Gun 2, but that's not until long after, and fuck, I don't even know what the hell that's going to be about or know even if it's sexy. I'm very concerned, about what Top Gun 2 is going to end up being, but it is going to be a reality. Anyway, all of that is to say is just keep that in perspective, that you have different writing teams, people with different ideas. Okay. And so, it's not as simple as just writing off a certain genre, franchise, whatever, whole cloth. But keep an eye out for this. And the mindset to watch out for is for you to think that there is an us versus them. And more specifically, an us versus them that requires the use of lethal force. And that's really what you got to watch out for. Sure, there's times in life where it feels like an us versus them. And that is, honestly, there's a time for that. Okay. But never is the us versus them something that justifies the use of lethal force or, other really, really deplorable actions. So that's what you got to keep in mind. Okay. So all that said, irony of ironies, let's get into our album of the week. And, fucking A. This is from a band that, so there, we ended that off. I got to all my questions. Great. This is from a band that was this, the band is called Overkill. I just got done talking about the, anti-military and not using lethal force and all this stuff. Look, we're talking metal now, baby. Okay. So Overkill. This is a band so intense. They are, I've said many times, everybody knows about the big four in metal, right? Or in thrash metal specifically, but you have Anthrax, Megadeth, Metallica, and Slayer. Those bands themselves have often said, really, it needs to be a big five because Overkill should be in that list. And in fact, when the big four were doing their big tours about a decade ago, they invited Overkill to be there because they know Overkill should be in their number. And I totally agree. I think, I love Megadeth. Actually, they're a very anti-military band. I love Megadeth. I love Anthrax. That's going to get taken out of context. Notice Megadeth, they don't spell it D-A-T-H. But anyway, regardless, big fan of Slayer and a fan of Metallica. Fairly big fan of Metallica. They're not my favorite band, not even, but anyway. But Overkill, in my opinion, is better than all of them combined because they've had so many albums. I don't know if this is like their 20th album. It's up there. They've had so many albums, and somehow every single one of these albums, studio albums, is great. It's not good. Okay. It's not, well, that was a good time. That was fun. No. Every single album by Overkill, even to this day, is great. And every single fucking song is top notch and is totally listenable. They've never, in my opinion, written a bad song. I don't even know what other band I could claim that of. Even my favorite band of all time, which is Kiss, they've done bad songs. They wrote Paralyzed off of Revenge, which is a perfect album except for that one goddamn song. God damn it. Overkill is amazing. And they just came out with a new album a couple weeks ago called Wings of War. All right, there's your irony. And it's a masterpiece. Opens right up at Last Man Standing, and it'll just kick your ass. I was playing it for someone, and they were just like, oh my God. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. It was so solid. The metal was so hot. This album is another track-for-track outing by the masters, of metal, really. And Overkill is. And these guys are like in their 60s. They're so fucking intense. Or I don't know, maybe in their late 50s. I think they're in their 60s. They're so fucking intense. Just an amazing, amazing band. Does not get enough credit at all. It would not be a stretch. The only thing is they don't really have range. Like they're not a one-trick pony, but like you never get more out of them than just straight metal. Like Metallica experimented with some different sounds. Megadeth has experimented with different sounds. Anthrax certainly has experimented with different sounds. And Slayer has had their day where they've shifted things up. Overkill is just, I'll just say it. They don't have two speeds. Like there's the joke that Chuck Norris only has two speeds, right? Walk and kill. Overkill it's in their name. They only have one speed and it's kill. That's what they do. So that's why I can't really call them my favorite band, because they don't branch out. Like they don't do anything different, but what they do, they're just the fucking best at, and they just tear it apart. They just tear it up. And if you're into that kind of sound, if you like Metallica, Megadeth, if you've never listened to Overkill, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you, but here's your chance to make up for it. You can go listen to Wings of War. Every track, there's no point in breaking down the songs. It opens right up with Last Man Standing, and it just keeps hitting you for a good 10, 12 songs, depending upon the version that you got. And it's a masterpiece. It's just another masterpiece. I knew it would be. It's not Album of the Year because it doesn't have the range that From Hell with Love by Beast in Black had. But fuck, this is awesome. This is so nuts. You want to go to the gym and have a good time, you put this action on. And then when you're done with that one, then you go listen to Ironbound, which might be my favorite album by them. Between that and like Electroshine, man, you're in for a time. So album of the week, Overkill's new album, Wings of War, which I told you actually months ago that I would be talking about it because I'd heard the song Last Man Standing ahead of time. And I was like, oh, we're in for a trip now. So go check this out and go hit the gym and go have a good time. So we'll end off with something a little happy. Okay. Kind of happy, depending about how you listen to it. But Overkill's Wings of War is phenomenal. And maybe I can get the boys from Overkill, one or two of them anyway, because they are funny as fuck. Maybe I can get them for an interview on the Hard and Fast podcast. So anyway, that's it. We'll wrap it up for this week's Wednesday Q&A. Zomia ONE Underground Wednesday Q&A, your underground Q&A. You've got it, baby. And of course, if you haven't already, you go over to ZomiaOne.com and you get your hookup. You get ready, because sooner or later, like SoundCloud's going to drop, and sooner or later Patreon's going to drop. So you're going to want to be on Podbean. Okay. You're going to want to be on Zomia ONE. Get over there, hit it up. It's going to be a great time. So much great shit to come out. And like most of it's already produced. So it's not like, and we're just uploading more episodes. It's not like, oh, is this ever going to really be a thing? No. Like I told you before, it's already a fucking thing. It already exists. It's already out there. The platform's all set. We'll just start popping out the shows. So anyway, there it is. I will see all of you on the other side. And thank you to those patrons that helped out this month that did extra. And if anyone wants to do extra, go for it. But thank you. I will see all of you on the other side.